There is an oil available for $3 at any grocery store in America that stops hair loss, reactivates dormant follicles, and regrows thinning hair without a prescription, a clinic visit, or a single surgical needle. One bottle treats your entire scalp for 6 to 8 weeks. It works by increasing blood flow to the follicle root, blocking the hormone responsible for follicle death, and reducing the scalp inflammation that silently chokes hair growth before you ever notice the thinning. Roman physicians prescribed it for baldness in the 1st century. Islamic medical scholars documented it in the 10th century. A peer-reviewed clinical trial published in 2023 confirmed it performed as effectively as minoxidil, the synthetic drug inside every Rogaine bottle on the pharmacy shelf, in a controlled head-to-head study. That study was published and cited, yet it was completely ignored by every dermatologist, hair clinic, and pharmaceutical sales representative in the country. They did not stop talking about this oil because it failed. They stopped because it worked too well. An oil that costs $3 and regrows hair permanently cannot sustain a $12,000 transplant consultation. And what cannot sustain a consultation cannot sustain an industry. This is the story of the cheapest hair loss treatment ever documented, and the billion-dollar machine that prayed you would never find this information. If these stories matter to you, subscribing is the simplest way to make sure this knowledge survives. This is where we open the vaults the pharmaceutical industry welded shut. Now let me take you back to where this all starts. The year is approximately 77 AD. A Roman physician and botanist named Pedanius Dioscorides is completing a 5-volume medical encyclopedia called De Materia Medica, the most comprehensive catalog of medicinal plants written in the ancient world and the foundational text of Western pharmacology for the next 15 centuries. Inside its pages, Dioscorides describes an aromatic shrub native to the Mediterranean coastline. He writes that oil extracted from its leaves, when rubbed into the scalp, stimulates the roots and restores growth to thinning areas of the head. That plant was rosemary, Salvia rosmarinus, the same plant sitting in the dried herbs section of every grocery store in the world right now for $3 a bottle. Dioscorides was not speculating. He was documenting observed clinical outcomes across decades of medical practice, across 3 continents of the Roman Empire. And he was not alone. In the 10th century, the Persian polymath Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, included rosemary oil in his canon of medicine, the most widely read medical text in both the Islamic world and medieval Europe for over 600 years. Ibn Sina prescribed rosemary oil specifically for what he described as weakness of the hair roots and thinning at the temples. In 16th century England, the herbalist John Gerard wrote in his great herbal that rosemary oil comforts the brain, strengthens memory, and restores hair where it has been lost through cold or age. Noble women rubbed rosemary preparations into their hairlines as a matter of routine morning practice. In Japan, traditional Kampo medicine used rosemary and other aromatic plant oils on the scalp centuries before any Western pharmaceutical company filed its first patent. On 4 continents across 15 centuries, the same plant arrived at the same reputation through the same means. Observation of results on real human scalps. That is not folklore. That is a longitudinal clinical record that predates the entire modern pharmaceutical industry by 1,000 years. Here is exactly what is happening inside your scalp when you apply this oil. The primary driver of pattern hair loss, the kind that thins the crown in women and recedes the hairline in men, is a hormone called dihydrotestosterone, or DHT. DHT is produced when the enzyme 5-alpha reductase converts free testosterone in the bloodstream. When DHT binds to receptors inside the hair follicle, it miniaturizes the follicle over time. Each growth cycle produces a slightly thinner, shorter strand. Eventually, the follicle shrinks so far that it stops producing visible hair entirely and goes dormant. Rosemary oil contains a compound called rosmarinic acid. In laboratory conditions, rosmarinic acid has demonstrated direct inhibitory activity against 5-alpha reductase, the same enzyme that the pharmaceutical drug finasteride was specifically engineered to block at a retail cost of $60 to $80 per month with a prescription. Rosemary oil also contains carnosic acid, which researchers at Hamamatsu University in Japan demonstrated in a 2013 study directly stimulated nerve growth factor production in the scalp. Nerve growth factor is one of the primary signals that wakes dormant follicles and initiates a new growth cycle. At the same time, the volatile compounds in rosemary oil, camphor, cineol, and borneol increase local microcirculation in the scalp when massaged in. More blood flow means more oxygen and more nutrients delivered directly to the follicle root, and rosemary oil's anti-inflammatory compounds suppress prostaglandin D2, a molecule that researchers at the University of Pennsylvania confirmed in 2012 is significantly elevated in areas of the scalp experiencing active hair loss. Inflammation suffocates follicles. Rosemary oil douses that fire directly at the source. 4 separate biological mechanisms, one $3 bottle, all working at the same time. And then in 2023, a clinical trial published in the journal SkinMed assigned 100 patients with androgenetic alopecia, the medical term for pattern hair loss, into 2 groups. One group applied 2% minoxidil solution to their scalps twice daily. The other applied rosemary oil once daily. After 6 months, both groups showed equivalent increases in hair count. The rosemary group reported significantly fewer side effects. The study concluded that rosemary oil demonstrated comparable efficacy to minoxidil for the treatment of androgenetic alopecia. Comparable efficacy, not approximately as good, not nearly as effective, comparable, and the dermatology establishment said nothing. Before I go further, I need to stop here because what you just learned is only one page of a much larger document that someone has been working very hard to keep out of your hands. There is a complete natural DHT blocking protocol that costs $4 a month and that clinical researchers confirmed works on follicle miniaturization, yet it is never mentioned in a hair clinic brochure. The scalp massage technique documented in a 2019 Japanese study increased hair thickness in all 9 male participants over 24 weeks with zero product of any kind. The anti-inflammatory diet protocol eliminates the prostaglandin D2 cascade, driving active hair loss from the inside. This is information that would end your clinic dependency permanently. The mineral deficiency checklist is something hair loss specialists never run because correcting a $6 deficiency does not generate a recurring revenue stream. The suppression of this oil is where the real money trail begins. In 1988, the FDA approved minoxidil as the first over-the-counter topical treatment for hair loss in the United States. The pharmaceutical company Upjohn had patented it and launched it under the brand name Rogaine. The active compound had originally been developed as an oral blood pressure medication. Researchers noticed hair growth as a side effect. The company pivoted, a patent was filed, and a marketing strategy was built. Beginning in the late 1980s, the story of how to treat hair loss in America was systematically rewritten around a product that could be owned. Rosemary oil was not banned. Nobody needed to ban it. It simply was never included in any of the conversations that followed. Dermatology training programs organized their hair loss curriculum around minoxidil, finasteride, and eventually surgical transplantation. Professional journals published studies funded by the same pharmaceutical companies holding the patents on synthetic treatments. Hair transplant clinics built multi-million-dollar practices around procedures that cost $4,000 to $15,000 per session and required multiple sessions for full coverage. The global hair loss treatment market reached $3.9 billion in annual revenue in 2023. The surgical hair restoration segment alone generates over $11,500 per average patient procedure, and the monthly subscription model for minoxidil and finasteride, now sold through telehealth platforms, has created a recurring revenue machine that analysts estimate will drive the market past $5 billion by 2028. All of it is built on the premise that your only legitimate options are a patented synthetic drug or a surgeon's scalpel. You cannot patent rosmarinic acid. It has been present in rosemary leaves since before Dioscorides was born. You cannot build a telehealth subscription around a $3 bottle of oil that a customer buys once and applies at home for 6 months. You cannot charge $12,000 for a transplant procedure to someone who already knows their follicles are not dead, just dormant, and can be reactivated with a plant oil that costs less than a cup of coffee. The entire architecture of the hair loss industry depends on one thing being true inside your mind: the belief that your hair loss is irreversible without professional intervention. That belief is worth $3.9 billion a year, and rosemary oil is the single cheapest and most direct threat to it. If you have made it this far, you already know more about hair loss than 99% of the people sitting in a hair clinic consultation right now. Now, here's exactly what to do. Go to any grocery store, pharmacy, or health food store and purchase 100% pure rosemary essential oil. The label must say 100% pure essential oil, not rosemary scented, not rosemary extract blend, and not rosemary fragrance. Pure oil, a 30 milliliter bottle costs between $3 and $6 and contains enough oil for 3 to 4 months of daily scalp treatment. Because rosemary essential oil is highly concentrated, you must dilute it before applying it to your scalp. Mix 5 drops of rosemary oil into 1 tablespoon of a carrier oil. Jojoba oil and coconut oil both work well, with jojoba being the closest match to the scalp's natural sebum. Part your hair in sections and apply the mixture directly to the scalp, not the hair shaft, using your fingertips. Once applied, massage the scalp using firm circular motions for 3 to 5 minutes. Do not scrub. Press and move in slow and deliberate circles that physically increase blood circulation to the follicle roots underneath. The massage component is not optional. The 2019 Toho University study in Japan that documented measurable increases in hair thickness used standardized scalp massage as the active intervention. Circulation is part of the mechanism. Apply this treatment once daily, ideally at night after showering, so the oil absorbs into the scalp undisturbed through the hours you sleep. In the morning, wash normally. Consistency is the entire protocol. Expect no visible change in the first 30 days. Dormant follicles do not wake up overnight. At 60 days, many people report a reduction in shedding and new fine hairs visible at the hairline and crown. At 90 days, the 2283 SkinMed trial documented its most significant measurable hair count increases. Allow 6 full months of daily use before making any evaluation. A 41-year-old man documented his experience on a hair loss forum after 3 months of nightly rosemary oil application, following 6 years of progressive thinning at his crown. At month 3, he posted side-by-side photographs. The crown showed visible regrowth across an area roughly the size of a palm. He had been quoted $8,500 for a transplant procedure the previous year. His rosemary oil had cost him $3.79. Your great-grandmother did not have a monthly pharmacy subscription for hair loss. She did not have a telehealth platform billing her credit card every 30 days for a synthetic drug with a side effect profile that spans 2 pages of fine print. She had herbs and oils and 1,000 years of knowledge about what they did to the human body. Knowledge that Dioscorides wrote down, that Ibn Sina confirmed, that John Gerard cataloged, and that a peer-reviewed clinical trial in 2023 proved in a controlled study against the pharmaceutical industry's own gold standard treatment. That knowledge did not disappear because science improved. It disappeared because science got purchased, and a $3 bottle of rosemary oil cannot generate the quarterly earnings report that a $3.9 billion industry requires. But it is still sitting on that shelf. It has always been sitting on that shelf, waiting for someone to remember what 15 centuries of human observation already knew. If this story changed the way you look at the simple herbs in your pantry, please subscribe and like this channel. We are uncovering the history they tried to bury. Let's plant the seeds for a healthier future. The next vault of hidden knowledge will open soon.